Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
I beg your pardon?
Entschuldigen Sie bitte, können Sie Deutsch sprechen?
I'm sorry, could you say it again?
You speak German?
Oh, German! I'm sorry, I thought there was something wrong with you. Oh!
30 years since it left our TV screens, Fawlty Towers is still acknowledged as the benchmark by which all other sitcoms are measured.
Funnily enough, the people who seem to find it hardest to enjoy are the hoteliers. And they sit down thinking they're going to enjoy it, and after 3 minutes they think, oh no, because they can see what's going to happen.
Sorry.
The popularity of Fawlty Towers, I think, today is a lot to do with John.
This smack on head.
Also, the ordinary situations, because there's something that are kind of timeless. People can relate to these taboo subjects.
Tonight, for the very first time, John Cleese and Connie Booth, the show's writers and co-stars, are both breaking their silence to share their secrets of how this classic comedy was made, including an insight into their strained marriage.
It didn't save our marriage, but I think Fawlty Towers became a kind of refuge for our demons and angels.
The true cost of Manuel's comedy stunts.
I thought as I was going down, I could hear the angels singing. I thought, thank heavens it's the last shot of the show, because I can't get up.
And how the BBC almost let this comedy crown jewel slip through their fingers.
Head something light entertainment. I'm afraid I thought this one as dire as its title, which I can't see being anything but a disaster.
Perhaps it's a dream. No, it's not a dream, we're stuck with it, right?
There were just 12 half-hour episodes of Fawlty Towers screened between 1975 and 1979, yet it remains a timeless classic.
Fawlty Towers survives because it's brilliantly made, brilliantly written, immaculately performed, precision comedy.
Do try to be agreeable this weekend, Basil. Now, have I got everything?
Handbag, knuckle dusters, flick knife.
I must say, it always feels to me as though there were many, many, many more episodes, and I think that's because of the richness of the stories and the characters.
Come on, then, give us a smile.
It was beautifully written and beautifully directed, and John and Connie and Andrew are wonderful people to work with, and I'm proud and grateful for that.
Thank you very much, yes.
It's like falling on a banana skin. It's funny if it's not happening to you. If it does, it can be tragic. You could describe Fawlty Towers as a tragedy with laughs.
I'm telling you, if the good Lord
is mentioned once more, I shall move you closer to him. Now, please!
I've been in some of the worst sitcoms, and will again, ever produced. And from the first moment in Fawlty Towers, you thought, oh, this is the best.
Are you joking? Don't worry, a bit of cheese went the wrong way.
The best bit about working on Fawlty Towers was the show itself, when it went out, and the reaction from everybody. And the fact that it's still being shown all over the world, and they keep sending us little checks.
I'm sitting here.
There's no lunch till 12.
I'm still having breakfast.
It's finished. All gone, breakfast kaput.
I'm having sausages.
He's not allowed.
Put that down. Look, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor and I want my sausages.
It's nice to have that in the CV. I did a Fawlty Towers, and I worked with Ralph Richardson, Paul Schofield, Laurence Olivier, John Gill, and John Cleese.
She's hysterical! Slap her!
Murder!
Slap her!
Murder!
Oh, spiffing. Absolutely spiffing. Well done. 2 dead, 25 to go. Quick, pull it!
John Cleese unleashed the rudest man in sitcom, the daddy of the dysfunctional, a character so tragic, so flawed, and yet so hilariously funny.
There it is.
John has created a wonderful comic creation in Basil Fawlty. He's just one of the classic comic characters of all time.
There's something about Basil which makes him a very good character for our times, I think, for our hyped-up, anxious, sort of rush-around times. He is the sort of symbol of mania and hysteria.
But there's more to this classic sitcom than just Basil Fawlty.
Basil?
There's his domineering, acid-tongued wife, Sybil. Dependable Polly, the overworked chambermaid. Dotty resident guest, the Major. And Manuel, simply the most famous TV waiter in history, who's from Barcelona, don't you know?
There is too much butter on those trays. Okay? There is too much butter on those trays.
No, senor. What? Not on those trays. No, sir. Uno, dos, tres.
After 30 years, the show's original producer has returned to the BBC archives to unearth the Fawlty Towers production files and rediscover their dusty details.
Here we have the programme costs. For the first episode in 1975, it was about £20,000, just over. John Cleese probably only got about £400 or something like that. We were real cheapskates. Terrible when you think about it. Absolutely amazing how little things cost in those days. But it was a cheap show, as demonstrated by the flexibility of the scenery. That's why it wobbled a bit from time to time, because we never had enough money to really structure it so it didn't wobble.
Thank you and good night.
We've got a drawing here of the original set, there. And it's instantly recognisable, even though this was made long before the sets were actually designed.
Apart from being bashed, crashed into and knocked down, Fawlty's set also once famously flirted with flames.
Yeah. Oh, no, please. No. Please. No.
The fire sequence, I was hurt in that. That smoke was created with the use of two chemicals on each other, and they create the smoke. And you don't feel it through the jacket. This is the theory.
Fire! No! Yes! See? Look, will you get back in there?
It was getting very warm and hot. So I thought, this can't be right. Can we just take my jacket off? Took the jacket off, and it was red raw. It had acid burns. It started hurting. So if you ever see that episode, be sympathetic to my pain.
He's always whinging on about that. I'll let him whinge when he writes me a good part, you know.
Coming up, we reveal the real-life inspiration for Basil Fawlty.
You want me to ring you at 7:15? You want breakfast as well? It was exactly that same reaction. I thought, this is really odd. He's running a hotel.
He was so gratuitously rude, because like all British hoteliers, he operated on the principle that I could run this hotel properly if it wasn't for the guests.
And hear firsthand the inside story of scriptwriting within a marriage.
I think John and I wrote together better than we did together.
So stay tuned for the grand reopening of Torquay's notorious hotel. 30 years on from its departure, Fawlty Towers still retains its ability to make the British public roar with laughter. Amongst its many claims to fame, it of course gave us one of the most iconic comedy characters ever created, the irrepressible Basil Fawlty.
He's so awful. He's so impossible. He's failing to achieve everything he wants. And although you disapprove of his goals, he's still failing. And he's such a sad character.
Success isn't funny. Failure's funny, and Basil just fails triumphantly every day at some point.
Oh, thank you, God! Thank you so bloody much!
I would describe him as a ludicrous figure who takes things to extremes. You know, whatever emotion he has, it's extreme.
Sybil! No! Do you understand? I remember Sybil! There's a party! Everybody, people over! He's on an emergency!
Everything all right? Bit of a bump. Just smoothing it out.
He's intelligent, but emotionally he just doesn't function well. because he's operating on a map of the world that just doesn't work. And he doesn't realise that being reasonably open and friendly to people would make him a lot happier.
Have you any idea of how much there is to do? Do you ever think of that? Of course not. You're too busy sticking your noses into every corner, poking about for things to complain about, aren't you? Well, let me tell you something. This is exactly how Nazi Germany started.
I think there's something about his height, plus his passion. You know, his desperation, his anger, and of course his fury. I mean, it's all there. I suppose I don't think anybody could do it except John.
Sorry.
He played these characters that were rather good at bullying people in a kind of authoritarian fashion, putting them down with one or two remarks, oh, shut up, or giving them a quick flick on the side of the head. This happened in Python, and that was, of course, the relationship he created with Manuel. And John could do that very, very well indeed.
The bottle.
Yes.
Where is it?
Okay.
Donde es...
Oh, I take it. I take it.
Come here. You're a waste of space.
Oh!
I could see elements of Basil Fawlty in characters that John played in Python. I could see the same kind of thought that went into that kind of physical comedy that made Silly Walk so successful went into Fawlty Towers.
I'll do the funny walk.
John played one or two characters in Python where sort of rising anger was sort of the joke.
Kick him in the teeth where it hurts! Kill!
We're just sitting at a table in the garden talking about reason and suddenly getting completely berserk about the world and banging the table. And John played this as only John could.
Coming down.
I think the thing about Basil Fawlty is that there is a lot of John in it. It's John's suppressed anger. I mean, he spent 30 years going to a psychiatrist because of his anger. He had so much anger in him.
I have a feeling that situations could arise when I would almost go as berserk as Basil. Oh, really? Yeah, really. Yes, there's something manic somewhere in me. People talk to me at parties sometimes, and they really do talk at me. And I have fantasies about picking things up, cheese dips, But I've never had the courage to do it, you see. I could do it on stage. Basil Fawlty did it.
No!
Why do they think that I have to be Basil Fawlty in order to write this? I mean, of course I have that in me, but I've got all the other characters that I play, You have to have all these emotions available to you, and then when you become, when you're asked to play a part, you suppress some of them and enlarge and play much more strongly some other emotions. But that's what you do. It's like having a palette. You choose this colour, and this colour, but not the others. You see what I mean? Then for a different character, you choose different colours.
John encountered the inspiration for his hardline hotelier when the Monty Python team checked into a Torquay hotel during filming in May 1971.
We were in Torquay because we were filming all the outdoor, all the exterior parts of Monty Python and staying in this hotel. And the first evening, we decided we'd eat in.
We were all having dinner there. And the owner, Mr. Donald Sinclair, was wandering around, very grand, not doing anything to help, of course, but being very grand. And he walked past the Python table where we were all eating, and Terry Gilliam had done what the Americans do, which is to cut the meat like that, and then they put the knife down, transfer the fork to this hand, and spear the meat with the right hand. And he stopped, and I remember he just stared. And then he said to Gilliam, "We don't eat like that in this country." And we were pretty astounded because it was completely out of the blue.
We were filming the next day, and I said, "Can you give us a call? Can we have a call in the morning?" And he looked a bit, yes. What time? And I said, "Well, about 7:15. 7:15? I mean, he's just like Basil. 7:15? You want me to ring you at 7:15? You want breakfast as well? It was exactly the same reaction. I thought, this is really odd. He's running a hotel.
I don't think he actually liked guests. I think he suffered them, and I don't think he liked working in the hotel either. I saw him close the bar at just after 9 o'clock one night. He said he was off to bed, and it was time everybody else went to bed too.
One day, Eric and I were waiting for the car to take us filming, and Eric left his briefcase by the door where he'd propped it up while we were just playing catch with a tennis ball. And when he got back, he went up to the desk and Sinclair saw him come in. Excuse me, what? What is it now? He said, I'd left my briefcase. He said, yes, he said, it's the other side of the wall. And he pointed out of the front door to a white wall, which was the far side of a swimming pool. And he said, it's behind the wall. And Eric said, what? He said, what? He said, it was behind the wall. He said, yes, I'll put it behind the wall. Eric said, well, why did you put it, what? Why did you put it behind the wall? He said, we thought it might be a bomb. And we'd make it right. Eric said, a bomb? And Sinclair said, well, we've had a lot of staff problems recently. So he really thought somebody had fired and come back and put a bomb in a briefcase.
I said to Mike, I thought, we can't stay here. I really can't stand it. I didn't see the comic possibilities that John had seen.
John had sort of worked out with Connie the logic of a Sinclair stroke Basil Fawlty position, which is basically that it is the people you're making your money from who are causing you trouble and problems. And if they weren't there, life would be much easier. There is a flaw there.
John capitalised on the indelible impression made by Mr. Sinclair while writing for the hugely successful ITV series Doctor at Large.
One of them was set in a hotel, and I remembered the original character, Donald Sinclair. Timothy Bateson did a terrific performance.
The prototype for Basil Fawlty was ready.
Yes?
Good evening. I believe you have a room.
At the end of it, Humphrey Barclay, bless him, said to me, you know, there's a series in that character. I thought, typical bloody television executive looking for series all the time. Thank you, Humphrey.
But Basil was to go on the back burner for another 3 years as John continued to conquer the known world as part of groundbreaking comedy collective Monty Python.
And now for something completely different.
Then, after 5 years of remarkable success, John suddenly walked out on the Pythons.
We were all very unhappy when John left the series, though it came as no surprise.
John was always planning to leave Python. I think after the first series he was planning to leave. He felt he'd had enough of us, I think.
None of the others understood, really. I think Eric understood a bit, but I don't think they understood why I wanted to leave Python. They thought he was great. And I was bored. We were repeating ourselves, and I thought I didn't want to do the third series.
Turning his back on subversive satire, Cleese joined forces with his 30-year-old wife, Connie Boo, the former New York waitress, to create something completely different, a conventional sitcom.
After I finished Monty Python, I'd always wanted to do something with Connie. And I was invited out by a lovely man called Jimmy Gilbert. He'd been made head of Light Entertainment. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'd like to do something with Connie. And he said, all right, well, why don't you just go back home and talk to Connie? Give me a call and tell me what you'd like to do.
John wanted to do something based on Donald Sinclair. So he asked me if I wanted to have a go with him at writing a pilot. And we'd enjoyed the bit of writing that we'd done together. I think the fact that we were husband and wife, that, you know, there aren't many places you can't go. And John really could make me laugh.
I think he'd always said that he would write with Connie at some point, and I think it was just a relief not to have to write with Graham, quite honestly.
Gray was very cross with me for leaving Monty Python, and I'm not quite sure why, but I think that he felt great security being in a group. Gray didn't function terribly well on his own. Maybe he felt that Connie had supplanted him as a writer.
I know that, because John's told me that Connie was so important to the writing of those shows, and in fact, generally her contribution has been sort of rather neglected or downgraded, and John always said she was, very, very important in the way that the ideas were sort of put together. So John needed somebody else there, as I did with Terry Jones. You need someone to bounce the comedy off and to think about the ideas, and someone who can tell you, no, that doesn't work.
We created it together. I think that it was the plot work. But, John's facility with language is extraordinary, and it was just wonderful to be working with him.
Production on the pilot began on the 23rd of January 1975, and the first person to commit himself to the new show was Cleese's former Python director.
When I first read the pilot script of Fawlty Towers, I was in fact banned from reading it in bed because I laughed so much. And even though we lived about half a mile from the nearest house, we were in great danger of embarrassing the neighbours.
I think it was very exciting in the first series, because it was this little thing we were doing in a back room. I never thought it would get figures remotely near Python.
Still to come, we look at the method behind the madness.
The laugh was based on Connie's laugh, actually.
Oh, he's a swine to have told that. But it's true, I guess.
Now, Sybil, that's enough.
And reveal how one of Fawlty's most... The year is 1975. Harold Wilson is Prime Minister. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier have a thriller in Manila, while Arthur Ashe becomes the first black tennis player to win Wimbledon. London is hit by snow in June, and Margaret Thatcher becomes the first female leader of a political party. But this isn't why 1975 is a landmark year. It's the year that Fawlty Towers makes its debut, September the 19th, to be exact.
I don't remember exactly why we wrote the Lord Melbury episode first. I don't think it was particularly to establish his snobbery, but then that was there, and it was kind of an obvious start.
Would you put both your names, please? Well, will you give me a date?
I only use one.
You don't have a first name.
No, I am Lord Melbury, so I simply sign Melbury.
Go away. I'm so sorry to captivate your lordship. I do apologise. Please do accept my forgiveness. Now, is there anything that I can do for you? Anything?
The apparent lord booking into Fawlty Towers was just classical. Basil suddenly cringing and obsequious. It was cartoony, but there was an awful reality about it as well.
So you're with a bath?
Oh, naturally. Naturellement.
The lower middle class stuff was a little bit of my dad in this, because he totally bought into the English class system. If I'd married a duke, duke's daughter, I'm sorry, or a duke, but a duke's daughter, he would have creamed his jeans, he could have gone straight out and shot himself, died a happy man,
I've never been in such a place in my life. You snobs! You stupid, stucker, toffee-nosed, half-witted, upper-class piles of...
In those days, if you were lower middle class, quite different from being middle class, he was lower middle class, aspirational. Millions of people were like that. Millions of people like that actually then, at the end of the decade, put Margaret Thatcher into power. So it had a great sort of force in terms of social history, what was going on then.
He wants to belong to a professional class, but he is a hotel owner.
And one of the fascinating things is the way that Sybil keeps pulling him back to earth.
Cognac for you, Doctor. It's rather fascinating you're both being doctors. Port for you, Doctor. Because at one stage I was contemplating becoming a surgeon.
A tree surgeon.
Thank you, Sybil.
Keeping a tight rein on her stick insect of a husband is Sybil Fawlty.
What's going on?
Nothing, my dear, nothing at all.
Mrs. Fawlty.
Now, look.
Yes, Polly.
I don't know what she's...
When we started to write Prue, we weren't sure how the character was going to be played. And at the first read-through, after the first day, we left rehearsal, and Connie and I said, well, what do you feel about Prue's performance? And we were both a bit worried because it wasn't what we had in mind.
I thought Sybil was going to be really difficult to cast, and so we were extremely lucky to get Prue. Because she's complicated. She's bright, but she's daft. She's steely, but she's frivolous. She's decent and annihilating.
And by the second day, our worries completely disappeared because we saw what she was doing and we realized it was better than what we'd had in our minds. But the interesting thing is, and I'm not even sure that Prue knows this, and I hope she won't mind, I was not so familiar with her work in those days. Just before we got into writing it, we went to see a very funny woman called Bridget Turner. And Connie and I said we should offer this to Bridget, and we sent the script off. And Bridget wrote a very nice, or just sent a message back saying she didn't feel it was right for her. And so she passed on it. So we said to John Howard Davis, we don't know, who do you suggest? He said, well, I think you should use Prue Scales.
Hello, dear.
What you doing?
I'm kissing you, dear.
Well, don't.
At 43, Prunella Scales was already a veteran of the stage and screen. Sybil was to become her most infamous and celebrated creation.
Hello, dear. Just going to,
I was sent along to see John Cleese, who was in bed with flu. And I was shown up to his room, and there he was in bed. And he said, what did you think of the script? And I said, I think they're absolutely brilliant. And he said, oh, good. Any questions? And I said, yes, why did they get married? And he said, oh, God, I was afraid you'd ask that.
I wish you'd help a bit. You're always refurbishing yourself.
What?
Oh, never mind.
Don't shout at me. I've had a difficult morning.
Oh, dear, what happened? Did you get entangled in the eiderdown again? Not enough. Or did you have to talk to all your friends for so long you didn't have time to perm your ears?
I think it was my idea that perhaps she wasn't as posh as he was. And what she fell for was his sort of upper-class manner and accent and everything.
All I said to her pretty early on was she's the sort of woman that could make love and paint her nails at the same time. And her class was self-evident. The shiny, tight skirts, the pretentious golf, the high heels, and the complete and utter control of her man.
Basil! Don't you dare give me any more of those pathetic lies!
The heels and the tight-fitting skirts, and that was based on somebody I'd known in the business as a child, you know, the sort of thing she wore.
Oh, Uncle Ted comes in with his crate of brown ale and...
The laugh was based on Connie's laugh, actually.
Oh, he's a swine to have told that. But it's true, I guess. I remember I had an acting teacher in New York who said, I really hate your laugh, Connie. Yeah, what can I say?
She would exhale and then draw her I hope she won't mind me saying, but she would laugh, because the great thing about Connie is when she laughs, she just busts a gut, you know. And she would do this. So we incorporated that. Somebody machine gunning a seal, remember?
But as Fawlty Towers began to take shape, not everyone thought the sitcom was such a great idea.
With Python, I think we'd all been sort of aware that we were trying to raise the stakes and have animation as a link and integrate film much more and be much more experimental in the form of the way we put the programme together. And there was nothing experimental in Fawlty Towers. It seemed very, very traditional.
Do please excuse me one moment.
I don't remember my friends having any kind of negative reaction, except for a couple of the Pythons. I mean, Terry Jones, I remember he called me, I think, a traitor.
I was very surprised when John decided to do a straight sitcom. I mean, it isn't straight; it's funny. It's a wonderfully funny show. But I was surprised that he decided to go down the sitcom route. Really,
the funny thing was how everyone got everything wrong. I mean, even the guy who at that time was reading scripts for Light Entertainment, he said, "I'm afraid I thought this one as dire as its title. It's a kind of Prince of Denmark of the hotel world, a collection of clichés and stock characters, which I can't see being anything but a disaster." Shall I read the guy's name out? No, he'll be retired now. Let's let him off. But it just shows, you see, people have no idea what they're doing.
Surprisingly, the first episode of Fawlty Towers was not an instant hit. In a time when Britain only had 3 TV channels, a disappointingly low 3.7% of the population tuned in.
First show was aired. Not very good initial reaction. I think the Mirror, the Sunday Mirror, said Long John short on jokes.
What the critics thought was totally irrelevant. And it didn't hurt our feelings.
I think that's what happens, you see. If you do something that is new, it seems to take longer, certainly did with Python, longer for people to get it. But when they do get it, they seem to get it more because it took a little time.
I was just finding my feet working with John, and I think my performance was quite stilted. But what John was able to help me with, I think, was coming forward and creating ideas.
Once we'd seen them do their performances, it helped Connie and me enormously to build. They'd started to put flesh on the bones.
One character that blossomed into the perfect sidekick for Basil was Polly, the low-paid chambermaid.
Connie was not just a very funny actress, she was a great dramatic actress, but at the same time she'd had no experience of working under the very demanding conditions of a sitcom where you have 5 days to rehearse something, which is not a lot. And then you have a 1 day in the studio and 2 hours in front of a studio audience, and that's very demanding.
Lamb?
Casserole.
Oh, sounds good. Does it come with a smile?
Comes with sprouts or carrots.
Oh, smile's extra, is it?
You'll get one if you eat up all your sprouts.
We deliberately did not give her a major part because I didn't want her to carry something that was going to be too difficult at the beginning. And if you look in the first show that she did, that she's holding her performance in a little bit, and then after that she flowers. I mean, she's wonderful. She's really wonderful.
Hello, Fawlty Towers. Please put the bottle down.
What is it?
Kurt is drunk. Under the table. No!
I think she's the least defined of all the characters. She is a go-between between Sybil and Basil, a sort of, as if they're her surrogate parents, she's there to keep the peace.
Polly is really a sympathetic character because she is the voice of sanity, the still calm around which the madness happens. And yet she does try to get Basil out of holes. You know, you feel that she's got a very good heart.
She has trouble with her arm. That's why she goes in the cupboard.
Exactly.
Are you feeling better? Her arm gets stuck there.
It's always happening to her.
He's dead.
Yes, it's her husband. She hasn't got over it. Died 30 years ago.
She doesn't mean any harm. In the cupboard.
No more today. You've had enough. Oh, my God, look at that. Look.
It wasn't in itself a terribly comic character, but it was, I mean, in a way, she was perhaps the sort of straight guy.
Oh, I see, Mr. Lehman.
Yes. We thought you said the linen.
Brilliant. Sorry, that's it.
He had some wonderful female characters, and all very well defined, and strong women.
It's the women saving the day time and again. I mean, it's Polly saving Basil from a predicament with Sybil, and Sybil saving Basil from his customers. It's a perfect dance. Basil is sexist, but Fawlty Towers is certainly not sexist.
I love the scene where Polly slaps me in the face because I've totally lost it, of course, out of fear for Sybil. If you actually look at Basil's motivation, apart from the snobbery, what it's really all about is not letting Sybil get in a tantrum, because he just can't handle that. He's more frightened of that than anything else.
We all make mistakes, dear.
But in the second episode, not even Polly can protect Basil from the full force of Sybil's fury.
He's no bloody good.
Oh, Sybil, you do exaggerate. I mean, he's not brilliant.
Not brilliant, he belongs in a zoo.
In the Builders episode, where David Kelly gets beaten with the umbrella, we tried all sorts of things to try and pad the umbrella out.
And to be perfectly honest, Mrs. Fawlty, I like a woman with spirit.
Oh, do you? Is that what you like?
I do.
Oh, good.
Now, Sybil, that's enough.
Come on, then, give us a smile.
Somebody on the floor said, look, that umbrella's heavy, and the ribs in the umbrella may very well crack yours. So I have an idea.
I ended up with the lads on the floor rolling foam into it.
It made the umbrella twice the weight. And so when she clouted me and John, we really felt it, you know.
I've seen better organised creatures than you running round farmyards with their heads cut off. Now collect your things and get out.
As he points out, he likes a woman with spirit, and by God, Sybil had spirit, you know.
Still to come, how the world's worst waiter became a national treasure.
Yes, indeed, my dear friend. Yes,
And the cast recalled the intense rehearsal process required to bring this carefully crafted classic to our screens.
Mr. Richards is the gentleman.
Performing of the series was always difficult. We were under enormous pressure.
If you didn't really know it by Wednesday morning, that was trouble.
The first couple of episodes may have left critics cold, but by October 1975, Fawlty Towers was fast becoming compulsive viewing for comedy fans.
Very well, let me explain.
And it was the bumbling, bewildered, but well-meaning Spaniard from Barcelona that stole the hearts of the nation, even if he did have a poor grasp of the language.
The great joy of the series, to me, and maybe to everyone, is Manuel and Andrew Sachs.
Manuel is sensational. And Andrew played it so beautifully.
He's a wonderful character actor, but I think, I remember he had Manuel right from the beginning in rehearsals, and I thought he was wonderful.
I mean, it's a wonderful, joyous creation. Everyone wants to hug Manuel and take him home and put him on the mantelpiece.
The man behind this lovable Spaniard was actually born in Berlin. 45-year-old character actor Andrew Sachs was starring in a successful West End show when he got the call that would change his life.
Manuel Towers, how are you? It's nice today.
The way I see Manuel, he's a very happy man. Even though he's being abused by everybody in the hotel, I think he's happy because I guess he comes from a big family, 10, 11 people maybe, his kids. And to be noticed there at all in Barcelona or wherever it was, you have to get the attention on you, do something naughty, get hit.
Get a clean one.
He's clean now.
He's dirty now.
The British family he was adopted into, that is the Fawltys, represented his father and mother in a way, and he knew he was being appreciated because they hit him a lot.
Go.
The relationship between Basil and Manuel could have been, again, very just cruel and unpleasant and heavy.
I don't want to work here anymore. Open the basket! Open the basket! Now, inside. Not you! I quit! Get out! I on strike! I'm warning you! I stay here is nice! You see this? You're next!
Manuel was based simply on one idea, which was that in London in the 70s, if you went to a restaurant, you were very, very lucky indeed to get what you ordered. And the reason was that the people who owned restaurants had discovered that by employing people who spoke no known language, they could save a lot of money.
The wine list, see? The what? Vino. Sale. No. The list. There, the list. The list there, the red rust, look there. There.
He and John played the physical comedy very well. I mean, John used to whack him over the head or sort of push him through the doors.
I love the violence on Manuel. I invented quite a lot of it. I invented the spoon thing when he hit on. I invented quite a lot of the violence. I like violence in comedy. I think it's very good. It makes you laugh. When in doubt, hit somebody.
He must have gone home battered and bruised on so many occasions, you know, and his wife must have said, "What did he do to you tonight?" And he said, "Well, he hit me with a spoon."
Oh! I grew up loving knockabout comedy. And my attitude to that was, if you do that kind of comedy, which makes me laugh because it's one of the elements of farce, you're going to get knocked down.
Get on with your meals!
Andrew bore the brunt of it, and there were times, I mean, certainly I was trying to hit him with a saucepan once with a glancing blow.
I'm creeping in, he comes up behind me, gets the pan, and he goes like that. But instead of stopping with this critical eighth of an inch, he didn't. He just went, I went down, and I could hear the angels singing. I thought, thank heavens it's the last shot of the show, because I can't get up.
I claim, of course he denies it, that he straightened up as I was, so I really caught him and he had a headache for 2 days. Thank God it was about the last shot in the show, so he was able to go on.
Manuel became dreadfully famous all over the world. And it was very pleasant, really, that it was so separate from me that I was extremely flattered that so much interest should come to it. And I was very happy doing it, putting on the uniform, putting on the accent for Jim Will Fix It or something.
I think that you should give him a Jim Will Fix It badge because he learns English so well. Would you like to put that round his neck?
Ah.
How about that?
Oh.
Yes, indeed, my dear friend. Yes,
Clean the windows.
Unfortunately, Basil's pent-up frustration doesn't end with his staff.
Is there anything else?
Where he was attacking me at the table, actors always come up a bit more when the audience is in there. You rehearse it and you're under control, sort of, and then you get a slight bit of red mist on the night. You know, it happens, and we all accept that it happens. So I think I was sort of slightly squashed at one point, you know, like that.
Don't worry, a bit of cheese went the wrong way. Never mind, he's fainted.
But Basil's mistreatment of guests also stretched to the long-term residents, the senile bumbling Major and the batty old spinsters Miss Gatsby and Miss Tibbs.
Oh, Mr. Fawlty.
Ah, good morning, ladies.
Ursula, I think you're a very naughty boy, don't you, Ursula?
Oh, God. Oh, really?
Basil isn't as horrible to them as he is to the guests. They're kind of part of his routine and they're part of the home. So he can control them, in a way. And they want to look after him, but he won't allow them. But he's never really cruel to them or the Major.
Nearly 6 o'clock, Fawlty.
Is it?
Yes, well, when you're ready, might have a fruit juice or
yes,
something.
Well, I'll open up the moment I've done this, Major, yes?
No immediate hurry.
Drunken old sod.
When Connie and I wrote the Major in the first episode, I don't think we had any thought of repeating the character, but when you see something and you think, oh, that's good, and we think, well, he'll be a regular.
How are you, sir?
I can speak English.
He really grew on us, and I loved the scene with the moose's head.
Ah, hello, Major. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
You also got a different quality from John, I think, with the Major, because you felt he liked the Major.
I rather fell in love with Ballard Berkeley. I just thought he was the finest kind of English gentleman of a slightly bygone era. There was a sweetness to him and a kindness that was very, very touching.
As a former matinee idol and much-loved television actor, Ballard Berkeley brought over 40 years' experience to the part.
Well, I mean, what a lot of people don't realise is how old Dad was when he started doing Fawlty Towers. I mean, he was nearly, well, late 70s, I suppose, when he finished it. And people forget, that he, had a career of sort of 60 years before that.
We were never nervous about Dad being the Major because it was so much him, a great character for him to play, because it was so like him, except he wasn't dippy like that.
No,
he was just affable and charming and got away with lots of stuff.
Dad's always thought of as a sort of military man, so when it comes to his war service, I think most people really sort of think he must have been, in the army. But of course, as we know, he was in the police and he got a beat in just off Piccadilly in Vine Street,
West End Central, wasn't it?
which was ideal for him because he loved the West End. The theatre was there, all his friends were there.
I must have been keen on her because I took her to see India.
India?
At the Oval.
He was a mad cricket fan. And I remember once I was rehearsing a scene with Sybil, and we were doing the dialogue, and I glanced over, and there was Ballard, meaning the third Australian wicket was down. I couldn't even wait till the end of the scene.
My daughter still almost inevitably will introduce herself and say, my grandfather, because she loves talking about him, and it's because she gets such a good reaction as well.
As well as stars of the silver screen, the hotel environment also offered the perfect setting for some of Britain's best-loved actors to check in as guest stars.
You knew that you were being invited to be on something very special, and so it was a great privilege, and one felt blooming lucky.
John and Connie wrote a script that is unbelievably fine. They're gifted, truly gifted writers.
Now look, it's finished. Give those to me. Come on.
I think what John and Connie wrote was very tight and very complete, far more than most shows. There wasn't a lot of room for improvement.
These sitcom veterans were enticed onto the show by the gag-packed scripts that are now regarded as a masterclass in sitcom writing.
Oh, sorry.
Connie and I used to spend 6 weeks figuring out each script, and something like 2.5 weeks before we wrote a line of dialogue.
John had a small study and a very big desk. The desk faced the wall. We just started to play.
I used to type onto an old-fashioned typewriter, but we just sat there and talked to each other and, might write a word down or say, what was that thing that happened? You remember the scene where the lovely Australian girl has got the tarry handprint on her boob? Well, we'd had that idea, and we were writing weeks later. Connie said, what was that idea we had about that would work here? And I said, yes.
What's that on your hand, Basil?
Oh, that's some stuff in the cupboard, dear. Something I knocked over.
John is highly instinctive, and I think he knew that he wanted to be monitored in some way, and that's why he wanted me on board.
Basil?
Hi, dear. Just checking the doors.
I think that the women were very, very well written in Fawlty Towers, and that was basically Connie, because I remember suggesting a line early on, and Connie saying a woman would never say that. And I was saying, what, really? Wouldn't you? Why? So it was a tremendous learning process, and although at the beginning I was writing most of Basil and Manuel, and she was writing Sybil and Polly, towards the end we were much more crossing over, and she was writing much more of Basil.
Come on, give it to me.
But this fast-paced farce presented huge problems when it came to production.
Fawlty Towers differed from a lot of the sitcoms that were current at that time, but by virtue of the volume of the script. The average sitcom script was somewhere between 60 and 70 pages. These scripts ran 120, 130 pages.
Most of the episodes were too long, so Connie and John had to go off and rewrite them. And they were, in fact, I think they're still too longer than the normal. I mean, it's not 29 minutes, 30 seconds, it's 35 minutes, all that sort of thing.
In fact, none of the 12 Fawlty Towers episodes ran to their allotted 30-minute time slot. A feat unheard of in modern sitcom making.
I always believe that you cannot do comedy fast enough, and I always optimistically hoped that it would run to time. It never did, of course.
Performing of the series was always difficult. We were under enormous pressure with the rehearsal, and because it was a farce and the timing was so important and it was physically a very demanding show. I think it was tough on everybody.
Mr. Thurston is the gentleman I'm dealing with at the moment.
What?
Mr. Richards is the gentleman... Oh...
It was the first sitcom I ever did, where you rehearsed all day and you got the thing right. John's huge involvement and desire for perfection and get it absolutely right. And it's there in the end product.
We got Monday off. On Tuesday morning we met and read and blocked it. If you didn't really know it by Wednesday morning, that was trouble.
Yes, it was discipline. It had to be. We had to get through a lot of script. Not in my case, because actually, if you analyse my part, it's not big.
That's a rat. No, it's hamster. It's a rat, of course it's a rat. You have rats in Spain, don't you? Or did Franco have them all shot? It's pigeon. It's a rat.
It's not a pigeon, it's a hamster.
It was a feat of learning. And I used to go back and lie down. I had a little library, and I used to lie on the floor. I would record all the other lines onto a tape recorder, and I'd lie flat on the floor, and I would have it by my ear, and I would be doing my lines in the lines that I'd recorded. It was the only way to get it done. I couldn't do it now. I could do one show, but I couldn't be there at 10 o'clock in the morning just starting the second one, because the pressure was relentless. And people said to me, "Did you enjoy it?" And I used to say to them, I didn't have time.
Although most of the filming was confined to the BBC studios, the team did venture out on the odd occasion, with one of the show's most memorable scenes shot on location in a sleepy suburban street in Harrow.
Don't, you vicious bastard! Come on! Oh, my God! I'm warning you, if you don't start...
When we were working on the gourmet night, and the car breaks down, and John was improvising because we hadn't got into the dialogue, he started losing it with the car and swearing at it.
That's it! You've tried it on just once too often!
I said, now he's got to hit the car, he's got to attack it.
I'm going to give you a damn good thrashing!
Everyone says that beating the car is so funny, but when we were out filming, we had the car, but I had to find the branch.
Part of my duties was ordering up props. I'd asked for a selection of branches, and before we turned over, before we rehearsed anything really, John had a trial period with branches.
The first branch that I tried to hit it with was too rigid. It was just like a rod, and it just wasn't funny. It wasn't remotely funny. It wasn't just less funny, it wasn't funny. Then I went and got a sort of wispy, willowy bit and started to swat the car with it, and that wasn't funny. And it was only when I got the third piece and felt that and went back, and then it was funny. But I didn't know until I had physically done it, which and then I thought, that feels right.
Coming up, Basil improves foreign relations.
It's a kind of Tourette thing, you know, whatever you shouldn't say comes out.
I'll just get your hors d'oeuvres. Hors d'oeuvres, which must be obeyed at all times without question.
And the writer's relationship breaks down.
There was a huge gap between the two series because Connie and I, as far as I remember, got divorced.
Brilliant! Oh, brilliant!
Despite impeccable storylines that would become etched into the nation's consciousness, Fawlty Towers was more of a slow burner than an instant hit. But by the end of its first series, the sitcom had almost doubled its viewing figures, with nearly 3.5 million viewers tuning in to watch the final episode, entitled simply The Germans.
The veal chop is done with rosemary. It's funny, thought you'd gone to Canada. And it's delicious and nutritious. In fact, it's really good. Really good.
The whole German episode is quite brilliant. It's a kind of Tourette thing, you know, whatever you shouldn't say comes out. But that is also helped by the size of Fawlty.
All in the market together. Old differences forgotten, and no need at all to mention the war. Sorry.
He can't help it. He is a fairly prejudiced English snob. And no matter how he tries to cover it up, as he must try to do in administering this place, he can't.
I'll just get your hors d'oeuvres. Hors d'oeuvres, which must be obeyed at all times without question.
Basil is vile to the Germans, who emerge as extremely courteous. They're not portrayed as humorless and aggressive or anything. That was a very interesting episode, that, because it was just deliberately writing Basil as being, you know, utterly vile to these nice people.
Will you stop talking about the war?
Me? You started it?
We did not start it.
Yes, you did. You invaded Poland.
When this huge, tall man starts to goose step and then puts his finger up like that, you know, I mean, there's no half ways about it. This is very heavy, very, very heavy rudeness.
When he said, "I'll do the walk," swung his leg out and goose stepped out, people were screaming. It was just an incredible moment.
Yeah, watch. Who's this then? Stuff you, but I'll do the funny walk.
I've always had a mixed personal reaction to the Germans episode because people go on about it so much. And I sometimes wonder, a little bit like Alf Garnett and the problem that Johnny Spate used to have, whether people are laughing out of animosity towards the Germans, when the whole point of that from the very, very beginning was to make fun of people still hanging on to those antediluvian attitudes. And it bothers me. And what I notice about the Germans is how they love it.
I'm trying to cheer her up, you stupid crowd!
The Germans episode obviously upset us very much. Otherwise, it would be only half as much fun, wouldn't it? No, but to be serious, it was taken very well by the broad majority of the German audiences.
One of the best moments of my life was standing in the Atlantic Hotel in Hamburg. And suddenly, as I was chatting to the concierge, a big, jolly German businessman sort of, "Hey, John!" and shouted across the lobby. And I turned round and he said, "No mentions of war, huh?" And the entire lobby roars with laughter. I thought it was a wonderful moment. I thought, that's great. Now we can get on with it.
You have absolutely no sense of humour, do you? This is not funny! Who won the bloody war anyway?
Fawlty Towers is very much a period piece in terms of relations with Irish people, foreigners of any kind.
There's plenty, absolutely plenty of xenophobia and racism in Fawlty Towers, but because it's a character thing. It's who Basil Fawlty is. We're laughing more at his prejudice than we are at anything else.
Ah, Mr. Fawlty, you're so charming.
Well, one does one's best.
Written more than 30 years ago, it's easy to spot more than a spattering of racial stereotyping, but one scene in particular has grown more shocking with age.
And the strange thing was that throughout the morning she kept referring to the Indians as niggers. No, I said. Niggers are the West Indians. These people are wogs. No, she said, all cricketers are niggers.
I don't think you would be able to get away with that scene now. You couldn't, because you couldn't justify it.
I can't remember if I watched it when it kind of first went out or if I saw a repeat of it. But I do remember thinking, not being offended by it, because he was talking in a language that that generation talked about.
I don't care much for Germans.
Well, I know what you mean, but...
Bunch of cuts, that's what they are. All of them. Bad eggs.
Well, yes, forgive and forget, Major. I mean, God knows how, the bastard. Still.
The Major is epitomising, you know, a time where Fawlty would have felt more comfortable. And so he kind of has to use that language. And yes, it's shocking, even now, probably more so now, because those things have been eradicated.
Nobody could take the Major as anything other than a lovable old idiot. So you see, there's two ways of criticising an opinion. One is to criticise it direct, and the other is to voice the opinion in a character who is ridiculous.
It was showing, in a way, what is totally unacceptable, but what still resides in the sort of behaviour of some people.
Despite doing little to improve foreign relations, Fawlty became a hit around the world.
It's always been a mystery to me why certain shows work abroad. My only answer is, I think it may apply to Python too, is that I think we may have hit what they call archetypes. That there were certain types of people represented by the characters that people from different cultures could recognize.
Todo a su entera satisfacción. Sí, gracias.
Shown in more than 60 countries, it is one of Britain's most successful TV exports, even turning up in the most unlikely of places.
Pues se lo voy a decir. Llevo aquí sentada casi una hora.
Servicio rápido.
At one point, a German company wanted to do a version of where they dub it into German. This German company understood that I come from Germany, it's my first language. Would I come over and play Manuel in German with a Spanish accent?
Mrs. Fawlty, Mr. Fawlty.
Was ist?
Stürzen, fallen, Klatsch von Leiter.
Von den Leitern?
I would have a line like, I love you, Mr. Fawlty. I love you, Mr. Fawlty. But the German version would be, oh, Herr Fawlty, ich liebe dich, ich liebe dich.
Attempts have also been made to remake this bastion of British comedy.
My God, ये तो drop scene की तरफ जा रहे हैं. अब इंस्पेक्टर ख्वाजा साहब आ जाएंगे. हमारा मिशन तो अधूरा रह गया यार. अब बस है, फिर तनख्वाह काटता हूँ तो रोते हो.
When people have tried to remake it, it's never worked, considerably to my disappointment. I mean, when the Germans redid it, they did it superbly.
Chef? Kann ich jetzt endlich einen Gin Tonic und einen Whisky Sauer bekommen? Sauer.
The network just thought it was too expensive, I think.
There is only this unique character of Basil Fawlty and the one and only John Cleese. And maybe one came to the conclusion that it wouldn't work as well with another personality, another hotel, in another setting.
I mean, it was extraordinary when the Americans tried to remake Fawlty Towers. It surprised me that they never asked me for any advice or help or comments. And it wasn't any good.
Whispering Pines presents to you Pacific Ocean Duck.
Is this some kind of joke?
Yes.
The really bizarre one was when I met someone at a weekend house party, and they said, "Oh, we have the rights for Fawlty Towers, and we're going to remake it." I was delighted. I said, "Great! Well, I hope we can make it work this time." And we said, "We got." I said, "But there's one or two problems. Like, are Americans familiar with these little family hotels?" They said, "Oh, yeah, it's not a problem." I said, "Were you going to make any changes?" And they said, "Well, we're just making one change, really. We're going to write Basil out." And I remember thinking, did he say that? And B. Arthur did it. It was called Amanda. And they took the funny lines and gave them all to B. Arthur when all the motivation for the funny lines no longer existed.
As proved, there can only be one Basil Fawlty. The first series ended in spectacular style in the autumn of 1975.
However did they win?
By bagging 2 awards for Best Sitcom and Best Comedy Performance by Cleese.
But of all the people who've helped me this year, I should, most of all, like to thank me, without whom, quite honestly, I could never have hoped to win this fairly great honour. So thank you, me. Thank you very much indeed. And now, although I can't be with you, I have arranged for the award to be collected. So if we could close the door now, it's getting a little cold. Thank you so much.
A second series was swiftly commissioned, but the writing went on hold as John rejoined his Python pals for a sellout tour and to shoot their latest film, Life of Brian. It would take a staggering 4 years for Fawlty to return.
There was a huge gap between the two series, and also Connie and I, as far as I remember, got divorced.
The work went on in spite of us and in spite of what was going on. It didn't save our marriage, but I think Fawlty Towers became a kind of refuge for our demons and angels, and that maybe was why we were able to go on to write the second series.
We had been having doubts about the marriage in 74, and we finally split up in 76, and it was one of those relationships where there was an enormous amount of love and affection, and still is. But we first found it difficult to live together, so I moved out, moved back in, moved out, moved back in. And having finally moved out in the middle of 76, I think we started writing the next series about a year later because there was no ill will.
For us, it was a release because somehow I think, too, in the relationship of Sybil and Basil, we were able to get out a lot of our frustrations with each other through those characters.
It was quite civil, and we got down to the work. I remember we'd get stuck, we'd take walks sometimes and not talk. And there were other times when John would take off like a racehorse in the work. He would just go, he was on his own track.
Oh, here, use this one.
Oh, thank you. John and Connie had split, and we had no idea. John would arrive, and then Connie would arrive later. You just thought, well, she's come in a different cab or something. We had no idea. They kept it so, not particularly secret, but we just carried on as we carried on.
I certainly don't remember it being a problem of any kind. They worked together beautifully, and it was a happy unit.
Manager!
Yes? Testing.
I've never met such insolence in my life. I come down here to get some lavatory paper, and she starts asking me the most insulting, personal things I've ever heard in my life.
I thought you wanted writing paper.
I'm talking to you, what? What?
Connie and I didn't enjoy the second series as much as the first because we felt this pressure to be as good.
I did feel, yes, under pressure, but not to the degree on the second series I think that John did with his history. He had more at stake, and I could trust him to do the worrying, which I did. But it took off in a way that I don't think either of us had ever expected it would.
It wasn't like the first series when you're sort of playing and discovering and having fun. It was kind of delivering the goods, and that wasn't as much fun.
Coming up, problems mount on the second series as a punch-up in BBC corridors puts production under threat.
We said, well, what's happening? And they said, well, we can't record tomorrow, we're on strike.
And we reveal how those infamous Fawlty signposts were created.
Possibly the most shocking thing was actually the anagrams at the beginning. Was it not Flowery Twats one?
This is Fawlty Towers, the hotel that guests hate to stay at, but viewers can't stay away from.
When I pay for a view, I expect something more interesting than that.
But that is Torquay, madam.
But it's not good enough.
Well, may I ask what you were expecting to see out of a Torquay hotel bedroom window? Sydney Opera House, perhaps? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
The dreadful Torquay Hotel is instantly recognisable by its infamous black and white exterior. Although fans may be surprised to learn that this legendary landmark was actually based in leafy Buckinghamshire.
This is the actual hotel, exactly halfway between my house and the BBC. I went to see it quite by chance. It was a country club, but it was absolutely perfect because it's up the steep slope. I was worried about its whiteness. It didn't look quite like Torquay, but yet it had a kind of seaside feel about it.
Woburn Grange Country Club is, alas, no more, burning to the ground in 1991.
Possibly the most shocking thing was actually the anagrams at the beginning. Was it not Flowery Twats one?
The motivation for that was the newspaper boy who was always being smacked by Basil. And when he left the hotel, he always rearranged the lettering. In fact, it was Ian MacLean, the assistant floor manager on the series, who was the only person who could do it.
We were on location at the hotel and having lunch, and John said, "You do crosswords, work out some anagrams of Fawlty Towers." So I set to work, and I found only one that is a true anagram. There may be others, I haven't gone back to it, which was flowery twats. And I said, "But you can't use it because it's a little vulgar." And John Howard Davis and John Cleese said, "I think we'll fit that in somewhere."
Despite its smutty signposts, Fawlty was now regarded as the jewel in the BBC's comedy crown. And on the 19th of February 1979, 4 years after the first series ended, Basil was back, with a record-breaking audience of almost 13 million viewers.
Hello, Fawlty Towers.
I was worried about the second series because by that time I'd gone on to an administrative job.
Boy, Mrs. Fawlty.
Goodbye, Mr. Perkin.
Satisfied customer. We should have him stuffed.
I asked Bob Spears to do the second series, and I think it worked quite well. I don't think you could see the joins. It was in some ways more polished, but I'm only saying this because I directed the first series, that I thought the first series by and large was funnier. John would probably disagree.
Now, the second series was quite different because we knew that the first series was very good and people remembered it, as they often do, as being better than it was. So even if it was there, people remembered it as being there. So we realized that the new shows have got to be there. And by and large, I think the second series programs are better than the first.
With this new series came a new face, a cheerful Cockney chef called Terry, played by Brian Hall.
Mr. Fawlty, take it easy. Now look, we'll get one thing clear, all right? You don't tell me to take it easy, all right? I don't pay you to tell me to take it easy. I pay you to take it easy. No, I pay you to tell you to take it easy, so take it easy, all right?
I think that Connie and I felt that after 6 episodes, somehow we needed a new element on the staff.
Mr. Lehman, Dad.
Well, that would explain a lot.
No, Mr. Fawlty. Really? Paul just said so.
What are you on about? I just took him his kippers. Oh, my God.
He was cocky and sturdier than Manuel, wasn't he? And a little bit slippery.
Brian was an absolute sweetie. He said, "You gave me the key to this character." And I said, "Did I?" And he said, "Don't you remember? I came up and I asked you at the very beginning of the first episode, what's the key to Terry?" And he said, "The police are after him." And once he had that, he knew how to play it. And he just fitted in so beautifully.
So our new chef just left, just popped out for a quick prayer, I expect.
As well as fresh faces, the second series gave a greater insight into its characters.
Excuse me, I do apologise, but I'm afraid I shall have to ask you to...
Especially Basil and his very stuffed shirt approach to sex.
Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Your thing. I mean your charm, in the middle.
Yes, I know.
Basil has a tremendous problem with sex because he's not getting it. You see, I don't think Basil and Sybil have actually had it for quite a considerable time. And the dead giveaway, to me, is that they are in twin beds.
I suppose the oddest thing about them is the bedroom. I mean, even Morecambe and Wise slept in the same bed.
The primary emotion is that the poor fellow is unloved. And he feels unloved, and therefore he is constantly in a state of irritation.
You are aware of our rule about visitors, are you? No visitors in guests' rooms after 10 o'clock?
Oh.
Of the opposite sex?
No, I wasn't.
Ah.
But I am now. So you'll send up the champagne, will you?
What?
The champagne.
You're drinking it on your own, eh?
I guess I'll have to.
Very well. 1 bottle of champagne for one.
Thank you.
And 1 glass.
That's all I need, unless you care to join me.
No, thank you. Not when I'm on the job.
That's when I enjoy it the most.
Basil has a bee in his bonnet with Mr. Johnson because Mr. Johnson is obviously sexually successful. And Basil is jealous. Basil is jealous. And wants to bring him down.
This bit of crumpet's your old mummy, is she? Oh, this is rich. Oh, Mother Johnson popped up for a quickie, did she? May I meet her?
Certainly.
Mother Johnson, come out, wherever you are. How do you do? Are you enjoying your stay?
I thought The Psychiatrist the episode was wonderful.
And you, Doctor, are you,
I'm a psychiatrist.
Very nice, too. Well, cheers.
We were both in group therapy at that time, family, marital group therapy, and whether, again, indirectly, the whole idea of having a psychiatrist in that episode and what it would do to Basil and all the sexual difficulties, that was just very funny.
There was the extraordinary encounter with the psychiatrist, where he thinks he's asking about how often he has sex. Now, the sort of sophisticated angle there is that Basil Fawlty is actually obsessed by sex, which he would be because he can't actually manage it in real life.
We were just speculating how people in your profession arrange their holidays, how often you can get away. How often do you manage it? How often can you and your wife manage it? You don't mind my asking?
Not at all. About average, since you asked.
Average?
Mm-hmm.
What would be average?
Well, you tell me.
Well, couple of times a year.
Once a year? Well, we knew it must be difficult. My wife didn't see how you could manage it at all.
Well, as you've asked, 2 or 3 times a week, actually.
A week?
Yes, pretty normal, isn't it? We're quite normal down here in Torquay, you know.
The vision of the two of them having sex is quite a nerve-wracking idea.
The state of Sybil and Basil's marriage was explored further in The Anniversary, although viewers would have to wait a little longer than expected to see this slice of insanity.
It was going very well, and the most extraordinary thing happened. There was a strike at the BBC because a rigger punched a BBC executive, and immediately it was all out. And he said, well, what's happening? And they said, well, we can't record tomorrow on strike.
The rigger was duly dismissed, and this being strike-ridden 1979, the BBC union swiftly took industrial action. Production staff downed tools and walked out for 7 days.
They came back, they said, it's been settled. We'll be recording again next week. The character eventually played by Ken Campbell was being played by a lovely actor called Julian Holloway. But Julian Holloway said, I can't do it next week. I've got another job, I can't get out of it. Well, I said, what do we do? He said, well, we have to recast. So we brought Ken Campbell in, who was wonderful.
Yeah, I'll just get a brush. A Basil brush!
That wonderful character of Ken Campbell, it's needling Basil. And the way it builds, everyone's so concerned about Sybil. They've got to see Sybil. And, it's excruciating the way it mounts, and the nuts and the wine. I think it's wonderful.
I don't know if you've ever seen the moulding up there, but one of... Oh, it's all right, don't worry, I'll clean it up.
What time's the main feature?
The nice thing was we had 2 weeks to rehearse it. You see, Ken was able to come in, the rest of us knew the part. And it was the one time that we really began to get relaxed because we'd done the lines enough times to really relax. And I think it has some of the best performing we ever did in that particular show.
Happy anniversary!
Oh, you poor dear! How are you feeling, dear?
Oh, it's a shame.
The anniversary is my least favourite episode because I'm in it, I think, and I can't bear looking at anything that I'm in. But also, I can see I was nervous because it is quite nerve-wracking being a guest on something, especially as something as great as that.
She won't mind me sing.
Oh, she would. I think she would.
Oh, but it's her anniversary. She's up there all on her own.
Old leg, bit of chip. Oh.
And there's an extraordinarily sad moment when you see Sybil's vulnerability.
I came back from my clubs, Basil. I'm not staying.
Oh, aren't you? Okay. What? I'm sure you know best, dear.
You don't even want me to, do you?
Well, what's that?
I think the scene I look back on with great fondness is when they've had a fight and she's sort of trying to make it up. And you realise that actually she is emotionally quite dependent on him.
I'm going now, Basil. I think it's best, don't you?
All right, dear.
She's kind of trying to establish connection with Basil, but Basil is in the thralls of extreme embarrassment and only has one thought in mind, which is to get her out of the hotel before all the guests discover that she's not upstairs in bed at all, and that must be someone else.
Right, Basil.
Cheer it up.
I certainly sometimes found myself thinking, what is this woman doing with this man? I mean, why does she stick it out? Obviously, there is a deep-rooted affection that they have for each other. I mean, he knows his place, you know, he needs a woman like that. They work so well together. I'm sure there's many marriages like that.
Do you remember when we were first manacled together? We used to laugh quite a lot.
Yes, but not at the same time, Basil.
It sounds terrible, probably, but I think I have to say that Basil and Sybil's marriage is like most marriages that I have observed in my 70 years.
We all make mistakes, dear.
They work together. They can never escape from each other.
Do you? You never, ever learn! How on earth did the two of us ever get together? Black magic, my mother says.
Well, she'd know, wouldn't she?
The second series was due to come to the end of its illustrious run on the 2nd of April 1979.
Great fun.
But another bout of strike action threw production into jeopardy once more.
From tonight, the recording of drama and light entertainment will have to be suspended. As a result, some comedy shows have had to be cancelled, including the final episode of Fawlty Towers, which will now never be made.
Thankfully, this overzealous reporter got it wrong. The final episode was made, but it would take a full 6 months before Basil the Rat went to air. Coming up, problems of a furry kind cause havoc on set. Why this iconic sitcom stopped after just 2 series.
They offered John everything to do another series, and he said no.
And we go in search of the legendary lost episode. It took up just 6 hours of TV time, 12 perfect half-hour episodes, and even though it's been 30 years since it left our screens, this multi-award-winning sitcom is still regarded as the finest comedy ever written.
Not you!
Could I get my hat?
Your hat?
Yes, it's just there.
Yes, I'll have it sent on.
It's fitting that the best was saved till last, although, owing to more strikes at the BBC, it would be a full 6 months before the final episode, Basil the Rat, aired.
Basil!
We had a sort of recap rehearsal, went into the studio on the Saturday, which we never ever did, and because we had the rats, it was the only scene that was ever pre-recorded, just in case there was somebody in the audience, or the crew, who had a real phobia about it.
Don't move.
When I was told on the first day that I would be going into a studio and it would be a real rat that I'd be working with, I thought, oh, that's going to be interesting.
So that's 1 pâté and 1 Windsor soup!
John would go to great lengths to make sure that all members of the crew and particularly the cast were comfortable, and John just got himself in her eye line and basically mugged at her to take her mind off the fact that there was a small furry rodent running around her feet.
I mean, how many people get John Cleese to themselves for a whole evening and just listening to funny stories? So it was fantastic deterrent to the fear of the rat.
What are you doing?
What?
He had his hand in my bag.
What? No, you know something. You're getting my gander up, you grotty little man. You're asking for a bunch of 5s.
Bomb scare.
What?
There's been a bomb scare.
A bomb scare? Yes.
Yes, that's why he was searching in your bag. He didn't want to alarm you.
May I?
Well, I don't really...
Just 1 moment. Thank you.
We had a call, you see.
Well, shouldn't you get everybody out?
Well, that's why we were looking under your table. We just didn't want to draw attention.
I think even the rat popping up in the biscuit box, which is still one of my favourite bits, and I know it doesn't look like a real rat, and that's part of its charm.
Biscuits.
Would you care for a rat?
When we recorded the last episode, we knew it was the end. It was very sad, really. And there were a lot of people were saying, oh, don't worry, we'll be back in 4 years. We'll do Series 3 in 4 years. It'll be fine.
Fawlty Towers shut its doors for the last time on Thursday the 25th of October 1979. Its creators picked up another 2 BAFTAs for Best Sitcom and Best Comedy Performance by Cleese. And Basil duly handed over the comedy baton to his successors.
No, look, now listen, I'm not going to do it this week. Well, you've got to have something. I mean, what about edited motocross highlights or Horse of the Year show or inter-counties basket weaving or something? Well, how about a cheap tatty review? All right, that suits you. Cheap tatty review, then. Stand by and shoot!
They offered John everything to do another series, and he said no, that we had 2 series of 6. And if you do a 3rd series, and it's not as good as the other 2, you then devalue the currency of the first 2.
Although only a dozen shows were ever aired, rumours persist of a legendary lost episode lurking in a dusty BBC building somewhere.
I have it at home, and for a small fee can be persuaded to send it to you by mail order. No, we have a just lovely idea. 13th episode.
Unless it was made by an entirely different team, there is no 13th episode.
No, we wrote 6 in the first series and 6 in the second, and then Connie and I looked at each other and we thought we'd done it. We didn't want to have that pressure to be as good again. We would have failed. People would have said it was very funny, but it wasn't as good as the first 2 series, so what was the point of doing it?
I said, would you ever think of writing some more? He said, yeah, I suppose I could. I said, key question, would you do it without Connie? He said, no. And I think her contribution was much bigger than people believe.
I think it was absolutely right, true, that covering the 2 taboo subjects, we'd done it, and it felt like there were, 3 sort of situations within each half hour, so it felt like a lot more than 12 episodes, I think. I don't think by then John and I could have gone on working together. I think we felt we'd done it.
30 years after this hopeless hotel closed up for good, Fawlty Towers retains an affectionate place in the hearts of the British nation. And in 2008, fans were treated to a reunion of Basil and Manuel as they made a rare royal outing.
Well, I'm fond of Andrew, and somebody suggested that it would be good in view of what had happened with Jonathan Ross and the other guy. The audience would like to see us together or something, and it worked very well emotionally.
What is the 11th letter of the English alphabet? K?
John rang me up and said, would I come on, just do a brief entry as Manuel. I can't very well say no to John anyway, because he's so much bigger than me.
Now run for it, you stupid...
I thought the outflowing of love that evening was so wonderful, and you could tell it with him as well. And I said to him afterwards, I said, that was the old John, wasn't he? He said, what do you mean the old John? I said, you should be back here, mate. He always feels that Michael Palin's become a national institution, and he would have done if he'd stayed. Not that he's jealous of Michael, they're still great friends.
Tantalising though it was to have Basil back, what the public craves is for Fawlty Towers to open its doors once more for another series.
I was constantly being asked by the public, are there going to be any more? That's the favourite question of fans. How are they going to be? Is John going to write some more?
My only sadness is that they didn't go on to write at least another 12. Then we could have had 24 to watch and watch and watch.
The only idea that Connie and I ever had for an extension of Basil was that Manuel has left and set up an establishment in Spain, and Sybil and Basil decide that they're going to go and visit him, which I think would be fun. And I thought that what happened was Basil has the usual appalling experience at Heathrow or some other terminal where a hijacker tries to hijack the flight, and Basil becomes so furious that he actually overcomes the hijacker and becomes a hero.
I've been 52, 53 years on stage, and yet Fawlty Towers, that full 9 minutes in one episode of The Builders, makes me recognised anywhere in the world.
A number of episodes in Fawlty Towers, I think, were pretty close to perfection in comedy, and I've never ever got that myself. That's why I said, I'll never get that, I'll give up.
I was delighted to have been part of Fawlty Towers. It was a lovely job. I think I did my very best with it, and it was a bloody good episode.
I just think it was absolutely the best of its kind and the best of its time. You know, it stands out from practically everything else going on at the time.
Knowing that you're going to go to work and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh, even though you'd seen the joke many times before. And to say, oh, I'm going to work today, I shall be drained of stomach muscles by midday. That's a terrific feeling.
All Connie and I tried to do in comedy is make people laugh as much as possible. That's what I love. I love the intensity because that brings the biggest laughter.
I suppose it felt kind of like a freak event in our lives. Yes, I'm incredibly proud to have been associated with it.
But I think the main quality it had, it was so bloody good.
Out! Everybody out! Come on upstairs, pack your bags, adios, out!
You stay, please, you no go. We have very first Fawlty Tower next. Hey, Mr. Fawlty, he want to get better class of customer. He big snob.